The Boston Harbor Islands National Recreation Area is collaboratively managed by 11 agencies, including the National Park Service, Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, the City of Boston, and private organizations. The identifiable human history of the area begins with the Wampanoag people. The Native Americans visited the Boston Harbor Islands from early spring to late autumn every year, making full use of the island's natural resources. The name Massachusetts is from an Algonquin Indian word, Massachusetts, which means by the range of hills. The islands themselves are essentially a range of hills, exposed heads of granite and slate, eroded and shaped over millions of years by the Laurentide ice sheet. The glaciers also left smooth, sloped hills or drumlins made of glacial till. The exposed rock and piled up glacial drift was built upon by thousands of years of accreted wind and water deposited sediments. Of the harbor islands, some drumlins include Deer, Thompson, Spectacle, Long, Georges, Great Brewster, Pettix, which is composed of 5 drumlins, and Bumpkin, among others. Today, a lot of these rocks are at the surface again, only because of the erosion that removed many thousands of feet of the rocks that once overlay them. Many of the islands were quarried for granite and are therefore much smaller. The protection of the shipping trade and of Boston itself required the building of lighthouses and fortifications on several of Boston Harbor Islands. From 1825 to 1832, the federal government constructed a seawall around Georges Island to control erosion. Many of the islands still show human-made fortified seawalls. With British warships off the coast, at the end of the War of 1812, a massive stone and granite structure was built on Georges Island. It was called Fort Warren. The fort continued to operate as a prison during the Civil War and as a harbor defense system through the World Wars. It was decommissioned in 1947 and designated a National Historic Site in 1958. Bumpkin Island is another example of a once heavily used island. A hospital for children with disabilities was built and later used for polio patients. A U.S. Naval training camp was also active during the wars. Most of the island is covered with early successional tree, shrub, and vine species, indicative of a landscape returned from managed lawns and gardens in the early 1900s. Several very large trees, approximately 100 years old, are on the island. Species include birch, pear, and apple. A single yew may have been part of a 1900s ornamental planting for the hospital. The 34 islands and peninsulas included within the Boston Harbor Islands are a one-of-a-kind place with a Civil War-era fort, historic lighthouses, tidal pools, and miles of lush trails.